At 5:15 a.m. on a freezing Thursday morning, the unthinkable happened at the Royal Lodge. The Duke of York, Prince Andrew, was awoken not by his butler, but by the blinding flashlights of the Royal Protection Squad. This was not a negotiation. It was an eviction. Insiders confirm that a highly classified red box directive, an emergency monarchical decree, was executed before the British press was even awake. Andrew was given exactly 45 minutes to pack a single suitcase. His private security, which cost the British taxpayer roughly £3 million a year, was instantly liquidated. The locks were changed, the perimeter was sealed, and the Duke was physically escorted off the 98-acre estate he swore he would never leave. But to understand how the King's favourite brother was thrown out into the cold, we have to expose a financial and political scandal the palace tried to bury forever. Before we uncover the classified documents that brought down the Duke of York, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel right now. We are the only ones bringing you the uncensored truth from behind the palace gates, and you will not want to miss the explosive evidence we are about to reveal. Let us pause and rewind the clock exactly 8 weeks. For years, Prince Andrew has played the archetype of the untouchable, corrupt noble. He believed that his late mother's ghost and a 75-year ironclad lease shielded him from the consequences of his disastrous public life. He believed he could outwait the public's anger, hiding behind the high brick walls of the Royal Lodge, sipping tea while the world outside demanded justice. He fundamentally underestimated the new regime. Prince William does not operate with the sentimental weakness of the past. William represents the righteous reformer, a future king who understands that the monarchy must brutally purge its liabilities if it is to survive the 21st century. Behind the scenes, William has been spearheading a ruthless, deeply classified modernization campaign, and Andrew was squarely at the top of his list. At exactly 9 a.m. on the first Monday of last month, William ordered an unprecedented financial audit of the Royal Lodge's structural funding. He was not looking for a compromise. He was looking for a silver bullet, and he found one. The Royal Lodge is not just a house. It is a fortress of royal privilege, a sprawling 30-room Georgian mansion that has stood as a monument to untouchable elite power. When Andrew took over the lease in 2003, he paid a mere £1 million for a property worth easily £40 million on the open market. He felt invincible. He treated the grounds as his personal kingdom, a place where he could entertain shadowy billionaires, controversial figures far from the prying eyes of the British press. For over 2 decades, he operated under the assumption that royal blood granted him absolute immunity from the mundane laws of real estate and financial accountability. Even after the catastrophic television interviews, even after the multi-million-pound legal settlements, Andrew clung to the Royal Lodge like a lifeline. He was convinced that his older brother, King Charles, would never possess the ruthless conviction required to physically remove him. He thought the monarchy's ultimate fear of public embarrassment would keep a roof over his head. But he failed to recognise that the true power behind the throne had shifted. William had taken the reins, and William was utterly devoid of mercy when it came to protecting the crown. The operation to dismantle Andrew's sanctuary did not begin with a physical confrontation. It began with numbers. Cold, hard, indisputable data. William bypassed the traditional palace courtiers, knowing full well that the old guard would leak the plan to Charles or try to soften the blow. Instead, he quietly enlisted independent forensic accountants from a top-tier international firm. Operating under a strict, ironclad non-disclosure agreement that threatened ruinous legal action if breached, this shadow team was granted unprecedented, unredacted access to the Windsor Heritage Exchequer records. They were tasked with one singular objective: to find a catastrophic breach of contract. For 3 agonizing weeks, these auditors worked in a windowless room deep within the operational annex of Kensington Palace. They pored over thousands of pages of redacted ledgers, maintenance receipts, and offshore trust fund transfers. They were hunting for the paper trail that would prove Andrew was bleeding the estate dry. What they discovered went far beyond simple negligence. It was a systemic, calculated violation of the Sovereign Grant Heritage Maintenance Act, a legal infraction so severe that it rendered the Duke's prized 75-year lease completely null and void. We must examine the specific legal mechanism that William weaponized to spring his trap. According to Clause 4B, Section 12 of the 1992 Sovereign Grant Heritage Maintenance Act, any royal resident occupying a Grade 2 listed Crown property is legally bound to maintain its structural integrity out of their own private funds. The Crown provides the land, the resident ensures the palace does not crumble into dust. The forensic audit, a 72-page dossier of financial ruin, revealed that Andrew had spectacularly defaulted on this foundational obligation. Millions of pounds required for critical renovations had vanished into the ether. The auditors documented rotting roof timbers, crumbling historic masonry, and dangerous structural decay, spreading across the 98-acre estate like a cancer. Rather than investing his private wealth to fix the Crown's property, investigators allegedly uncovered a labyrinth of secret trust funds being systematically drained. The capital meant to preserve the majesty of the Royal Lodge was allegedly being siphoned off to cover the astronomical, bleeding costs of Andrew's private legal settlements and his suffocating £3 million annual security detail. The King's brother had broken the most sacred contract of his residency. He was effectively squatting in a decaying royal monument while the British taxpayer was kept completely in the dark. The silver bullet had been forged. William finally had the legal ammunition required to authorize the Red Box Directive, setting the stage for the most explosive and humiliating confrontation in modern royal history. The 72-page Windsor Heritage Exchequer Audit was not merely a financial document. It was a carefully constructed weapon of mass institutional destruction. When the lead investigators from KPMG presented the final dossier to Prince William in the secure subterranean briefing room of Kensington Palace, they did not speak of rumours or tabloid gossip. They spoke in the cold, indisputable language of forensic accounting. They laid out high-contrast, black-and-white images of internal financial ledgers, drawing thick red circles around meticulously hidden offshore accounts and property maintenance codes that had been manipulated for years. The auditors uncovered a staggering diversion of funds under the classification of Code 404, a ledger entry specifically designated for the preservation of historic masonry and load-bearing infrastructure. Instead of securing the crumbling foundations of the Grade 2 listed mansion, these funds were systematically drained into a labyrinth of shadow trusts. The physical reality of the Royal Lodge was rapidly mirroring the decaying reputation of its occupant. Behind the manicured hedges and the heavy velvet curtains, the palace was literally rotting from the inside out. Sections of the roof had become dangerously unstable. Gold leaf was peeling from the cornices of the grand reception rooms, and black mould was silently creeping up the walls of the servants' quarters. The Duke had transformed a crown jewel into a derelict fortress, gambling that the sheer embarrassment of exposing the decay would prevent the monarchy from ever auditing his domain. He was catastrophically wrong. When William read the final page of the audit, witnesses report there was no shout of triumph, no dramatic display of emotion. There was only a terrifying, absolute silence. He immediately ordered a media blackout across the highest echelons of the palace communication team and instructed his private secretary to draft the writ of annexation. William knew that if this operation was going to succeed, it had to be executed with the brutal efficiency of a military strike. He deliberately bypassed his father, King Charles, understanding that the king, plagued by the sentimental ghosts of their shared childhood, might hesitate. Charles might offer a compromise, a delayed timeline, a soft landing. William was not interested in soft landings. He was determined to cauterize the wound that Andrew had inflicted upon the House of Windsor. The eviction would not be delegated to a mid-level courtier or a polite palace messenger. William chose to deliver the fatal blow himself, ensuring there would be absolutely no room for misinterpretation, negotiation, or appeal. This brings us to the most explosive, closed-door confrontation in modern royal history. It began on a bleak, overcast Tuesday afternoon, 48 hours before the unmarked moving vans would arrive. There was no advance warning, no polite phone call from the equerry. 3 black, armoured SUVs crushed the gravel of the Royal Lodge driveway, bypassing the outer security gates with overriding royal clearance. William stepped out of the lead vehicle, flanked by 2 senior lawyers from the Privy Council. These were not public relations experts. These were the ruthless, silent executioners of the Crown's estate. Men carrying lead-lined briefcases containing the irrevocable legal instruments of Andrew's ruin. They moved through the grand, drafty corridors of the mansion like a predatory force, ignoring the panicked questions of the skeletal household staff. They marched directly toward the drawing room, the heart of Andrew's sanctuary, pushing open the heavy mahogany double doors without knocking. Inside, the scene was one of archaic, isolated luxury. The Duke of York was standing by a roaring fireplace, utterly oblivious to the storm that had just breached his walls. The physical descriptions of the moments that followed are nothing short of staggering, provided by a source who was standing mere feet away in the adjoining antechamber. When William presented the findings of the financial audit and laid out the immediate termination of the 75-year lease, Andrew did not react with the quiet dignity expected of a royal. He erupted. Driven into a corner by the inescapable proof of his financial negligence, the Duke lost total control. He began pacing frantically across the antique Persian rugs, his face turning a violent, congested shade of purple. The veins popped visibly in his neck as he screamed, his voice echoing off the vaulted ceilings, demanding to know how a nephew dared to orchestrate such an ambush. He thundered that he was a prince of the blood, a decorated war veteran, a son of Queen Elizabeth II. He screamed that they could not throw him out into the cold like a common squatter, insisting that the lease was unbreakable and that the king would never authorize such an indignity. But William did not flinch. As the Duke's rage filled the room, William stood freezing cold, his posture perfectly rigid, entirely unbothered by the sheer volume of his uncle's desperation. He did not raise his voice to match Andrew's. He simply stood by the fireplace, letting the older man scream himself into a state of breathless exhaustion. It was a masterclass in psychological dominance. William allowed Andrew to expel every ounce of his fury, watching the cornered animal realized that the cage had finally snapped shut. The era of Elizabethan protection was dead, and the new regime had arrived to collect its debts. When the drawing room finally fell into a heavy, suffocating silence, broken only by the crackle of the fire and Andrew's ragged breathing, William moved. He unbuttoned his suit jacket, calmly reached into the leather folio held by one of the Privy Council lawyers, and extracted a single, heavily watermarked sheet of paper. He stepped forward, placed the writ of annexation directly onto the polished surface of the coffee table, and looked his uncle dead in the eyes. His voice was quiet, icy, and completely devoid of familial warmth. He told Andrew that his royal blood did not pay the roofers, that the contract was shattered, and that he had exactly 48 hours to vacate the premises before the Royal Protection Squad removed him by force. The 48-hour countdown was a period of frantic, suffocating desperation for the Duke of York. Left alone in the cavernous, echoing halls of the Royal Lodge, Andrew clung to the delusion of a last-minute reprieve. He was convinced that when the precipice was finally reached, King Charles would step in and halt the machinery of the state. He believed that the ancient bonds of brotherhood, forged in the nursery of Buckingham Palace, would override a cold financial audit. But that is the delayed revelation that ultimately shattered Andrew's world. As the hours bled away, the Duke reportedly made call after frantic call to Clarence House, demanding to speak with the monarch. The phones rang out into the void. Charles did not answer. The king completely abstained, remaining behind a wall of silence and protocol, allowing his heir to execute the eviction with ruthless precision. Charles understood that stepping in to save his disgraced brother would irrevocably fracture his reign and alienate William, the architect of the monarchy's future. By doing absolutely nothing, the king allowed the heavy, crushing weight of the crown's legal apparatus to fall squarely on Andrew's shoulders. The finality of this abandonment was formalised in a secret session of the Privy Council. Deep within the archives of the Crown Estate, a heavy, leather-bound book known as the Master Resident Ledger was opened. With a single, thick stroke of black ink, the name of Prince Andrew, Duke of York, was slowly and permanently struck from the page. The ancient, the unbreakable Lease was dead. In the eyes of the Crown, the King's brother was now officially homeless. To understand why William was so unyielding, so brutally efficient in orchestrating this downfall, one must look past the financial spreadsheets and into the deeply emotional, fiercely guarded core of the Prince of Wales. Palace insiders reveal a motive that transcends simple real estate management. The Royal Lodge, with its towering columns and sweeping driveways, is one of the most visible, tangible symbols of the monarchy's majesty. For William, allowing it to become a sanctuary for corruption and gilded decay was an unforgivable insult to the institution he was born to protect. William is violently protective of the Crown's reputation, the very same institution that his mother, Princess Diana, spent her life trying to humanize, modernize, and clean up. Diana openly despised the hypocrisy of the royal old guard, the untouchable elites who believed the rules of morality and accountability did not apply to them. Andrew was the ultimate manifestation of that old guard arrogance. By physically removing the Duke, by stripping him of his taxpayer-funded fortress and casting him out, William was not just enforcing a property contract, he was exercising the ghosts of the past. He was wielding the power his mother never had, finishing her work by purging the systemic rot from the House of Windsor. It was a cold, calculated act of institutional preservation, a message broadcast to every member of the royal family that the era of absolute, unconditional indulgence was permanently over. When the deadline expired at dawn on that freezing Thursday morning, it was no grand public spectacle, only the grim, blue-tinted reality of extraction. As the unmarked white vans idled on the frosty lawns, Andrew was escorted out of the 98-acre estate, leaving behind the heavy velvet curtains and the grand drawing rooms that had shielded him from the world. But the ultimate question remains: where does a disgraced, evicted prince go when the palace doors are bolted shut behind him? The Crown does not leave loose ends, and William have anticipated this exact logistical nightmare. Our deepest palace sources indicate that the Duke has not been left to wander. He has been banished. He has been relocated to a heavily monitored, profoundly modest three-bedroom cottage on the desolate, wind-swept outskirts of the Sandringham estate in Norfolk. It is a property completely cut off from the glamour of London society, surrounded by flat, unforgiving marshland. There is no sprawling security perimeter, no grand entertaining spaces for shadowy billionaires. It is an internal exile, a gilded cage stripped of its gold, where the Duke is expected to live out his days in absolute, invisible silence. But a cornered animal is always the most dangerous, and the Duke of York has just been stripped of everything but his pride. The silence emanating from the Norfolk marshes are not peaceful. It is calm before an unprecedented storm. Whispers are already circulating through elite literary circles that Andrew, desperate for an influx of cash and humiliated on a global stage, has been quietly contacted by an aggressively well-funded American publishing house. The offer on the table is allegedly staggering. Will the Duke of York cross the ultimate line and write a revenge memoir to rival Prince Harry's Spare? If Andrew decides to burn it all down, if he decides to expose the darkest, most closely guarded secrets of the Windsor vaults in retaliation for his eviction, he possesses the ammunition to bring the entire monarchy down with him. A man who has lost his castle has nothing left to lose by destroying the kingdom. We have a dedicated team of independent forensic investigators looking into the encrypted financial wires coming out of Andrew's remaining offshore accounts at this very second. We are tracking the money trail from London to New York, and the moment we confirm exactly who is bankrolling the Duke's next catastrophic move, we are dropping an emergency, uncensored video to expose the whole plot. You absolutely cannot afford to miss this next revelation. If you want the unvarnished truth that the mainstream media is terrified to touch, hit that subscribe button right now and smash the like button to support our independent investigations. We rely on you to keep the pressure on. And before you go, I need to know where you stand. Step into the comments section and tell me, did Prince William go way too far in his ruthless eviction of his uncle? Or did Prince Andrew got exactly the brutal justice he deserved? Sound off down below, and I will see you in the comments.